Do I smell another chance to talk about Dark Souls?
Well, unless you're secretly one of our patrons, you got a peculiar set of olfactory glands.
You mean I get to gush all over this series again on top of livestream, a deprived no gift run that you should all totally join me for? Shameless plug.
Actually, we're gonna be talking about Dark Souls 3.
That's it. Wait, 3?
Yes, 3.
Isn't there another game you're skipping over that comes between Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3?
Oh, yeah. No, we'll get to Bloodborne later. Alright, I got nothing against Dark Souls 2. Though I have heard it isn't as popular, that's not the reason we're jumping ahead. I just happened upon a copy of Dark Souls 3 in a used game store and couldn't resist. Can you blame me? I guess it kinda works out considering this was the director Hidetaka Miyazaki's return to the series after creating Bloodborne. Bamco was just a little too impatient for Dark Souls 2 and kinda hired new directors for the sequel, leaving Miyazaki to simply supervise the project. So yeah, Dark Souls 3 is a byproduct of Miyazaki reclaiming his director status as well as sprucing up or downright removing aspects of the sequel that he, as many of the other fans, didn't even like. But forget all that stuff, we're here to play a game! And another freaking challenging one at that. How can you possibly make a sequel to a masterpiece like Dark Souls? Let's see if this game is still burning strong or crumbling to ash. Metaphors! This game is incredible! Well, I mean, it's basically the first game again, but with a few caveats, which only makes it incredible. Have you ever seen Home Alone 2? It's like verbatim the first movie, plot points and all, happening all over again, but in New York. The first movie is still a classic, but the sequel is so obviously ripping itself off, it's hard to say the same about it, even though it's essentially the exact same movie. My favorite Christmas movie is It's a Wonderful Life. You idiot, I'm trying to make an analogy. Don't be such a Scrooge! Dark Souls 3 in almost every aspect is Dark Souls 1 again, and that should be a great thing. But something about the little changes kind of bring it down a peg. Ah, come on, it's more Dark Souls! I was just thrilled the game was just as great as I'd hoped. Well, we're not getting anywhere discussing the similarities, so how's about we just cover the differences? Oh, you mean like how Firelink doesn't actually link to anything anymore? Exactly. You'll discover pretty early on that Firelink Shrine is simply your hub level with a shop, blacksmith, and occasional NPCs, and a firekeeper who is now responsible for leveling you up as you can no longer do it yourself at a bonfire. I don't understand why we're trying to fix what wasn't broken. Taking away my ability to level up from a bonfire doesn't make the game more challenging, it just makes me wait through more loading zones. It was a stupid idea in Bloodborne and it's a stupid idea here too. That aside, the bigger issue is how the game world is designed. You'll immediately run into a dead end at Firelink after facing your first boss, and you'll have nowhere to go unless you rest at that bonfire and warp away to the actual first area. That's so awful! The first game prides itself on its open Metroidvania loading zone free exploration. Taking that away is unjustifiable. It does absolutely nothing good to the game but transform it into yet another linear pathway teleporting fast travel game. We didn't mention it, but you'll actually begin with the Lord Vessel ability to warp from the get-go. Not only does this completely destroy the world design potential, discouraging players to return and explore multiple pathways and environments thoroughly, but it's utterly sabotaging the whole point of bonfires. You'll also notice right away that the magic meter from Demon Souls makes a return, and you can choose to allot your Estus Flask to refill health or magic in any combination. But I didn't use magic on my first playthrough, so extra health for me! You'll actually acquire Estus Shards while exploring and turn them into new flasks at the smithy, so it's no longer based on bonfire kindling, which is totally fine considering we just sabotaged the bonfire mechanic anyways. Hey, it's more cool goodies to find scattered across the map to encourage exploration, so it gets my seal of approval. That aside, everything else is pretty finely polished. The enemies are various and challenging, areas are vast and interesting, and combat has been made even more fluid, and bosses are even bigger and stronger with new creative fighting styles and mechanics shaking up the variety. This pleases the seal of approval. I am still pretty disappointed with the lack of meaningfully interconnected areas, but we do get a few large secret ones. The problem is you'll need to discover one secret area and acquire some innocuous thing that'll unlock another area in a completely different nondescript location. Rinse repeat 3 or 4 times to find them all and fight all the bosses. The Nameless King awaits you at the end of this Illuminati scavenger hunt, and he's easily the hardest boss I've ever faced in the series. I genuinely thought I couldn't do it, but gosh darn it, I kept trying and buckled down and finally killed that toilet paper-haired freak. Nameless King barked up the wrong seal. This game looks outstanding. The new enemies and environments look and behave so lifelike that it's even more horrifying running into new threats. Would you stop with the seal thing? That's not even the right kind of seal. Except when the camera and wonky lock-on controls get you killed. This game looks great, moving on. So this is a big departure. The game's actually pretty straightforward with what you're supposed to be doing. Right there in Firelink, you can see 5 large thrones for the past Lords of Cinder, and you're told to bring those lords back, dead or alive, in order to relink the first flame once again. Luckily, one of the lords is totally willing to be burned alive and just kind of chills there in his chair waiting for the others to come home. Probably because the old man wouldn't stand a chance in a pillow fight, much less against an undead warrior, but hey, at least we don't have to hunt another one down. Bramps also converts your boss souls directly into new weapons and rings for you once you poke a giant tree monster to death, which is actually a wonderful change, as creating boss weapons before required maxing specific weapon classes first, without even knowing what the requirements were gonna be. Now you can just kill a boss and go talk to the Candyman and see what prizes you've won! Anywho, that leaves 4 empty thrones and you're off to explore the land of Lothric to hunt those 4 ancient bozos down to perpetuate this age of fire. Thing is, Dark Souls prides itself on overcoming despair and hopelessness, so don't be shocked if you're 30 hours in and still haven't even found a single lord. Once again, the story is predominantly told through offhanded item description, lore entries, and such. However, much more so than before, there will be quite a few characters you'll meet and converse with along the way. Even the occasional boss will speak with you as you fight, like Revolver Ocelot's long-lost dragon dad. Eventually, you return all the lords to their respective thrones, or rather just their heads, but hey, whatever works. The Firekeeper lights their way to the first flame, where you challenge the final boss, who's become an amalgamation of all of the chosen undead who've relinked that fire in all of the ages since Lord Gwyn. The best part is that it's here where you're gonna discover that the character on the cover art wasn't you, but the final boss. Talk about hiding in plain sight. And of course we got our last second choose what flavor of bad ending you like from before, which is fine and all, but considering this game obviously comes after the linking the fire ending in Dark Souls 1, I really hope we eventually get a game set after the events of the Dark Lord ending as well, considering that's my preferred narrative conclusion for Dark Souls 1. There is a lot of nostalgia pandering in this game, lots of revisited areas, familiar faces and such, and it kind of gets a little heavy-handed the more you explore and realize that Lothric is actually built upon the old land of Lordran, but I still kind of enjoyed it all nonetheless. Except calling this guy Sigward of Katarina, not to be confused with Sigmire of Katarina. That was just a personal attack on my dyslexia. And so was calling this guy Andre and this guy Andre. Wait, aren't they the same guy? Time itself in Lordran is literally falling apart with the first flame burning out, so who knows? You mean Lothric. Guess what? The soundtrack is just as amazing as last time. Well, it's certainly good, but I still kind of prefer the original to this. The dancer of the Boreal Valley boss literally dances to her own music, slashing and spinning around the room as her footsteps echo through the halls. That's cool! Really? I never noticed. I was probably too busy freaking out that the game just threw me into yet another boss fight after I just got cutscened away from the last one. Oh, and when you're facing the Lord of Cinder and activate his second phase, the music and its fighting style begin to reflect Lord Gwyn's from the first game. Usually I hate pandering, but boy is that yummy. The physical game even came with this odd extra disc thing that ancient humans used to use to listen to music. Now, if only I had a CD drive. He makes these jokes, but I still have VHS's, cassette tapes, and floppy disks in my basement. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you through those dusty heaves, Ashen One. If you found Dark Souls 1 to be a little too challenging, then really, give this one a shot. Maybe it's just me, but I didn't have nearly as much trouble beating this game as I did the original. Though I beat all the bosses, I honestly had to look them all up again to research this video because most of them didn't even kill me once. Kind of a bummer, but hey, I still had a great time. Just think, you start with the ability to warp, making backtracking non-existent, always have access to a way to spend your souls with a shop, smithy, and firekeeper, on top of the fact that this game's got a clear direction on what you're supposed to be doing. I know for some people those are good things, but honestly they're what's hurting my rating in the end. Wait, what? You heard me, the first one's undeniably better. The positive gamer in me can't help but kindle a burning 10 out of 10 for Dark Souls 3. Sure, it's got a few drawbacks, but it's still every bit as fun to explore and overcome as the original. The critical gamer in me definitely has some problems with Dark Souls 3, but not enough to go below a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I spent a lot of time griping about this game in this episode, but remember that the foundation we're building off of here, I consider a masterpiece. And a masterpiece with a few blemishes is still a work of art. But what do you think? Let us know how your positive and critical sides rate Dark Souls 3 in the comments below. But if you're still intimidated by this series when the quality of life version you wanted is right here, You're just playing with yourself.
Alright, just gonna call out a weird thing that was in the background this time. The painted figures and stuff, yes, they're all from the board game, and I know that the Titanite Demon is not in Dark Souls 3. I just don't have all these painted yet. There are figures that are actually from Dark Souls 3 that I can use, but still, I didn't get to them yet. It takes a long time to paint these little things, and I'm really happy with how they're turning out. Board game's fun! I never really got a chance to play board games with all sorts of miniatures like this, and I'm really enjoying this one. Anyway, Dark Souls. I really like Dark Souls. Can you tell I'm playing more Dark Souls on my channel? You should definitely join me for some more of that shameless plug anyway. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more, and use the links in the description to nominate your own episode. And thank you to all of our Patreon members, Aspen, Arrow, Sid, and Genio. Boop. Now, I didn't forget, and this episode was nominated by Genio. Goodbye!